before the first cities were ever built, before the first law was ever written, before humanity had learned of the wheel, or writing, or a sky full of stars with names. Someone was already here, or at least that is what the oldest texts in human history tell us. Not vague legends, not poetic myths passed down by word of mouth, but clay tablets inscribed thousands of years ago at the heart of Mesopotamia, a civilization that appeared by all accounts almost from nowhere, with a speed that defies every conventional explanation. And at the center of that civilization, a story about beings who descended from the sky, about gods who bore no resemblance to the gods we know from other mythologies, beings with technology, with science, with clearly defined purposes. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki. The word itself is a key. Anunnaki comes from Akkadian and translates essentially as those who descended from heaven. It derives from the Sumerian Anunna, the sons of Anu, the supreme sky god in Mesopotamian cosmology. Even their name speaks of a celestial origin, of an arrival, of a presence that was not born on earth, but came toward it. In the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, the Anunnaki appear as figures of absolute authority, beings with the power to establish order on earth and in the underworld. They are not simple personifications of nature, as the gods of many other cultures tend to be. They are described with remarkable precision, tall, with defined features, long hair and beards, possessing a level of technology and knowledge that the human civilizations of their time had no plausible way of having developed on their own. Astronomy, mathematics, architecture, agriculture, medicine, all of these, according to the Sumerian texts, were not gradually discovered by human beings. They were transmitted, given, by someone who already knew them. Researcher and writer Zecharia Sitchin spent decades studying these tablets and put forward a theory that has since captivated and divided the academic and spiritual worlds alike. According to his interpretations, the Anunnaki were not gods in the mythological sense. They were extraterrestrial beings originating from a planet the Sumerians called Nibiru, a celestial body with an extreme elliptical orbit that brought it close to the inner solar system at vast intervals of time, bridging worlds. According to this theory, the Anunnaki arrived on Earth approximately 450,000 years ago. The purpose of their mission was not spiritual or philosophical. It was practical and urgent. Their planet, Nibiru, was suffering from atmospheric deterioration. The solution they had identified? Gold, an element that, dispersed into an atmosphere, could stabilize and protect a planetary environment. And the Earth was rich in gold. And so they began to mine, to dig, to extract. But the work was colossal, exhausting, even for beings of their capabilities. At a certain point, after millennia of labor, even the Anunnaki reached the limits of their patience. They needed help. They needed workers. What follows in the Sumerian narrative is perhaps the most unsettling and most fascinating chapter of the entire story. According to the texts, the Anunnaki did not simply create tools or machinery. They created human beings, or more precisely, they created Homo sapiens through the genetic manipulation of existing terrestrial primates, combining their own DNA with that of the hominids already inhabiting the planet. The result was a new species, a being capable of following instructions, performing labor, communicating, and collaborating in complex activities. A being with enough intelligence to be useful, but, in the original intention of its creators, limited enough to remain controllable. This idea, however provocative it may seem, touches on a question that modern science continues to debate: the evolutionary leap of Homo sapiens. The appearance of modern humans in the archaeological record is remarkably sudden in evolutionary terms. Changes that should have taken millions of years occurred within a comparatively tiny window of time. Not all researchers accept the Anunnaki explanation, of course, But neither is there a comfortable consensus about the causes of this leap. The question remains open, and the Sumerian tablets offer an answer, uncomfortable, unconventional, but impossible to dismiss entirely. The story does not end at creation. What follows is as human and as universal as anything else. Among the Anunnaki, not all shared the same vision for humanity. The texts specifically mention two brothers, two of the most prominent among them, Enlil and Enki. Enki was the one who, according to tradition, oversaw the process of creation. He showed a connection, an affinity for the new species he had helped bring into the world. In the Sumerian narratives, he appears as a protector of humanity, a mediator between creators with ambiguous intentions and their fragile, curious creations. Enlil, however, saw things differently. As humanity grew, multiplied, and began to develop self-awareness beyond simple labor, the tension grew. Were these beings, these hybrid creatures, made as instruments, destined to become something more than servants? And if so, what did that mean for the Anunnaki themselves? This internal tension between creators reflects one of the oldest and most profound dilemmas of consciousness. What obligations do you carry toward what you have created? And what happens when your creation begins to surpass you? If the story of the Anunnaki feels strangely familiar, there is a reason. Scholars have long noted the striking parallels between the Sumerian narratives and the sacred texts that followed, including the Bible. Genesis 6:4 describes the Nephilim, beings called the sons of God, who united with the daughters of men, producing a race of giants and legendary warriors. This description mirrors almost perfectly the Sumerian story of celestial gods who interact and interbreed with humanity. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text excluded from the standard biblical canon, goes further. It describes the Watchers, beings who descended to Earth and transmitted advanced knowledge to humans: metallurgy, astronomy, medicine, writing. Knowledge that, until then, humanity did not possess. Is it possible that all of these traditions, Sumerian, biblical, Enochian, are different versions of the same historical memory? That behind the veil of myth and religious metaphor lies a reality that ancient civilizations each tried, in their own way, to record? We cannot know with certainty, but the coincidences are too precise, too numerous to simply be dismissed. Another thread of this immense story leads toward another legend, Atlantis. Some researchers in the alternative tradition propose that the Anunnaki did not only influence Mesopotamia, that their presence, or that of their descendants, or of those they shaped, can be found in the traces of advanced civilizations from across the entire world. Cultures that emerged with astronomical, mathematical, and architectural knowledge that is difficult to explain given their apparent technological level. According to this theory, Atlantis was one of the supreme achievements of this inheritance, a place where the knowledge of the Anunnaki flourished in its purest form. And when Atlantis fell, cosmic or geological catastrophe, no one knows precisely, its survivors carried that knowledge with them to every corner of the world. Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, the Andes of South America, the same obsession with the stars, the same mathematical proportions in architecture, the same myths of gods who came from the sky and brought the light of knowledge. Coincidence or echo of the same original source? This is perhaps the question that continues to ignite the imagination and sometimes the anxiety of people around the world. Some authors and researchers in the alternative field argue that the Anunnaki never fully left, that they continue to operate invisibly through structures of power, through elites linked to their lineage, influencing global politics, economics, and the technological direction of human civilization. It is important to approach these ideas with discernment. There is no verifiable evidence to support the existence of such an active presence. And it is easy for a narrative about superior beings controlling humanity from the shadows to drift into conspiratorial territory that paralyzes critical thinking rather than stimulating it. But there is a more nuanced, more profound question worth asking. If the Anunnaki existed, if they contributed to the creation or shaping of humanity, what did they leave behind? Not in a conspiratorial sense, but in a deep one. What capacities, what potential, what divine or extraterrestrial spark do human beings carry within them without knowing it? Wherever you stand in relation to these theories, skeptical or open, rational or mystical, one thing is undeniable. The Sumerian civilization appeared suddenly. It brought with it a complexity and sophistication without precedent, and it left behind texts that thousands of years later continue to raise questions that conventional science has not definitively resolved. Perhaps the Anunnaki are myth. Perhaps they are metaphors for natural forces that ancient peoples personified. Perhaps they are distorted memories of exceptionally gifted human leaders. Or perhaps, and this is the possibility that keeps the story alive, perhaps they are exactly what the texts say they are. Beings who came from far away, who saw something worth preserving in this planet, who created in the end something they did not expect, a species that, with time, grew to ask where it came from, a species that looks up at the sky and feels without quite knowing why. Perhaps it is not a coincidence that we gaze at the stars with such longing. Perhaps we are looking toward home,